A visit to City Cemetery provides an enlightening glimpse into the history of South Bend and is a record of development and a testament to its progress. Smaller markers bearing foreign names carved in their native German, Polish, and other languages trace the important immigrant populations that helped to build South Bend. Intertwined within South Bend's rich history, City Cemetery remains an integral part of the community. Because of its longevity, it stands as a monument to South Bend, creating strong ties to the citizenry and memories of the community. Local historian Adam Turing will guide you through some of the most interesting sites within the historic South Bend City Cemetery.
Located at 214 North Elm Street, the entrance is marked by a grand cast-iron late Victorian-style gate that evokes a transition from the bustle of the city to the refuge of the cemetery. Built in 1899, the gate marked a change from the original entrance on Linden Street to the new entrance on North Elm Street. Commissioned by the city, Champion Iron Fence Company of Ohio designed the gate to include the dedication date of City Cemetery in 1832 and the dedication of the new Elm Street entrance in 1899. The street paving bricks extending into the cemetery are over 115 years old. The original design of the surrounding fence was wooden pickets and railroad ties laid end to end, but it did not provide the security or the appearance desired, so a cast iron fence to complement the gate was installed. Built in 1899, the Sexton Cottage was intended to store records and serve the sexton, or cemetery director. In a letter by Wilson B. Parker of Parker and Austin Architects, the architect wrote to the city requesting payment for drafting a set of plans for the Sexton Cottage at City Cemetery. Built at a cost of $605, the single-story building is just 400 square feet and is a small-scale combination of various styles including shingle, late Victorian, and classic revival. The interior contains built-in cabinets and bookshelves that once stored the earliest records for the cemetery. These records have been digitized and are now stored off-site. Despite harsh Indiana winters, the Sexton Cottage was never used as a receiving vault, chapel, or reception area. Isaac Ross, who lived from 1760 to 1843, survived the American Revolution and lived until the age of 83. His grave is marked by the Daughters of the American Revolution Schuyler Colfax chapter and the Sons of the American Revolution Alexis Cook Willard chapter. Peter Roof, who lived from 1753 to 1831, is the first recorded burial in South Bend City Cemetery. Roof survived his service in the American Revolutionary War, moving to the area because he received land as a payment for his service. John Birdsell, who lived from 1815 to 1899, invented the Birdsell clover huller, once a very important farm implement. He expanded his product line in South Bend to include the manufacture of wagons and carriages. Lathrop Taylor, who lived from 1805 to 1892, was a fur trapper and trader who settled in South Bend in 1827. With the help of the Potawatomis, Taylor became the second white man to make South Bend his permanent home. He, along with Alexis Cook Willard, purchased and cleared the land that would later become downtown and donated the land for the original plat of City Cemetery. Taylor established a profitable trading post near the corner of Michigan Street and West Washington. He was appointed the first postmaster for the town. Taylor lived the rest of his life in the area historically known as Taylor's Field, now a local historic district. The 1850 census listed only 5 African American families living in South Bend. In 1858, Pharaoh and Rebecca Powell and their families bought property and built homes in South Bend and Mishawaka. Active in the social and business life of the community, the Powells were instrumental in the founding of the Olivet AME Church in the 1870s. Their sons Elijah, Colonel, and James Powell served in the Civil War. Nearby, Georgia May Ward Bryant was also of the Powell family. At City Cemetery, there is no segregation for any reason, including race, religion, and cause of death, where suicides or plagues often were segregated to separate sections. James and Mary McKinley, grandparents of President William McKinley, both passed away on their 43rd wedding anniversary. Cause of death was thought to be typhoid fever, an epidemic that swept South Bend in 1847. A tablet was dedicated at their grave by the Harry O. Perkins Camp 25 of United Spanish War veterans. City Cemetery is the final resting place of Armed Forces veterans from major conflicts including the American Revolution, War of 1812, Civil War, Spanish-American War, World Wars I and II, Korea, Vietnam, and the Gulf War. Laid out linear and formal as protocol demands, the predominantly Civil War section is marked by government-issued stones. The GAR monument, erected in 1914 by the Norman Eddy Post of the Grand Army of the Republic, was dedicated to all veterans of the Union Army. It once overlooked parade grandstands and greeted marchers in parades coming from the courthouse downtown. A second monument from 1911, dedicated to the unknown soldier and sailor dead by Women's Relief Corps of the Grand Army of the Republic, was removed in 2003 to the Military Honor Park near South Bend International Airport. Enoch Weiss, who lived from 1848 to 1917, received the Congressional Medal of Honor for valor against the Apache in Arizona Territory. Weiss was one of only 5 Hoosiers to earn the commendation. He later worked at Singer and Studebaker. Howard Wagner, who lived from 1905 to 1934, was a South Bend Police Department patrolman who was directing traffic on June 30th, 1934, when the Dillinger Gang rolled into town, robbing the Merchants Bank at 229 South Michigan Street. When shots rang out, Patrolman Wagner rounded the corner of Wayne and Michigan Street, but before he had an opportunity to unholster his sidearm, he was shot in the chest and died almost instantly. This would be the last robbery of the Dillinger Gang before John Dillinger was gunned down in July by federal agents in Chicago. It is not known when the bridge was constructed over the Kankakee Mill Race. However, in a June 1887 note to the Mayor and Common Council, citizens proposed that a bridge across the race in the city cemetery be built of stone instead of iron, with local materials. They speculated that if a bridge were built of rough masonry boulders, it would last for ages and be covered with trailing vines that would look picturesque and beautiful. The note, typed by Clement Studebaker, includes 25 additional signatures. As suggested, the bridge was constructed with walls of local rough fieldstone. This area was once picturesque with mature growth black walnut and oak trees, eventually becoming depleted by industrial pursuits of early settlers. Crossing over the bridge, the large third addition to City Cemetery was added in the late 1800s. As City Cemetery evolved, its design was influenced by popular styles, including the lawn park movement of the late 19th century. Promoting a sense of openness, the meandering roadways are a response to having little topographic variation and were designed to provide a variety of changing views. Unlike the earlier structured municipal graveyard, Lawn Park promoted cemetery gardens. Although the northwest corner seems sparse, it is a pauper section documented as Potter Field. Some burials have headstones, most are unmarked. A prosperous manufacturing center during the late 19th century, South Bend was home to many large fortunes which were subsequently displayed in death. Impressive memorials mark final resting places of wealthy and well-known local dynasties. Built in 1884 for the Clement Studebaker and Milburn families, the Romanesque Revival-style mausoleum features Gothic elements and is built of rough-cut limestone with granite accents. Below a cross, 1884 appears intertwined with the lily, a classic sign of mourning. In the early 1930s, the burials within were disinterred to the newer Riverview Cemetery on Portage Avenue, after accounts of vandalism. The 131-year-old structure has remained vacant since then. A second Studebaker mausoleum for Clement Studebaker stood in City Cemetery for 93 years until its demolition on April 18, 1989. In the early 1930s, the remains were moved to the Riverview Cemetery. The mausoleum remained empty, deteriorating until the structure was demolished. The original marble lintel was reinstalled at Riverview Cemetery, marking the gravesite of Clement and Anne Milburn Studebaker. As years passed, City Cemetery grew around the Kankakee mill race, resulting in a path that dissects the land diagonally. Around 1935, the Works Progress Administration began to assist with the beautification of City Cemetery, including filling in the race. Now, a clearly visible high ground with a good sod cover is bordered by towering old-growth trees. Scarcity of burial sites prompted the Board of Public Works to use the former race to create 200 additional lots for veterans of the United States Armed Forces. The lots in this section were free of charge for any honorably discharged veteran, with only a charge for opening and closing the grave. 3 to 4 rows of government-issued markers of uniform size and design lie flush with the ground. William H. Miller purchased lots in City Cemetery in 1874, and in 1882, the classical revival-style mausoleum behind me was constructed. William G. George, who lived from 1837 to 1914, achieved a first for South Bend. In a June 5, 1865 election, shortly after the city incorporated, 542 votes were cast, electing George the first mayor of South Bend. He lived at 212 West Colfax, a building that was later commercialized and remained standing. Norman Eddy, who lived from 1811 to 1872, moved to South Bend in 1847, where he simultaneously practiced medicine and law. He was interested in local politics and was elected to the Indiana State Senate and later the United States House of Representatives. When the Civil War erupted, Eddy organized the 48th Indiana Volunteer Infantry and received a commission as a colonel. 2 years into his service, he received a disabling wound and returned home. The star marker beside his grave indicates the Grand Army of the Republic, a fraternal organization of honorably discharged Union soldiers. Eddy Street on the east side of South Bend is named in his honor. John Auten, who lived from 1840 to 1861, enlisted in the Civil War at the first call of President Abraham Lincoln. On July 10, 1861, Auten became the first man from St. Joseph County killed in the Civil War, with a possibility of being the first Hoosier. His body was sent to South Bend, where it laid in state at the Second St. Joseph County Courthouse. Over 5,000 people viewed his body before the ceremonial burial at City Cemetery. In 1899, South Bend Mayor Schuyler Colfax Jr., who lived from 1870 to 1925, appointed a council committee to plan the new City Hall building financed by James Oliver. Freyermuth and Maurer were selected as the architects, with Chrisman Company as the contractor. The cornerstone was laid in a ceremony in 1901 with remarks by Mayor Colfax. The building faced Main Street behind the Morris Performing Arts Center and was torn down in 1970. Horatio Chapin, who lived from 1803 to 1871, came to South Bend in 1831 when there were only 10 log cabins and 168 people living here. Chapin was the first merchant with a store on the banks of the St. Joseph River. He was a local real estate investor, religious leader, and the first librarian. Chapin purchased a tract of land where he and his wife built a Gothic Revival home in 1855 to 1857, surrounding it with extensive orchards that produced apples and grapes. The area is historically known as Chapin's Park and is now a local historic district.
We hope you enjoyed taking the self-guided heritage tour and take advantage of this beautiful and interesting site in your own backyard. Help revitalize City Cemetery by donating to South Bend Venues Parks and Arts at sbvpa.org/donate. For more information about City Cemetery, visit sbvpa.org/citycemetery.